Have you ever traced a path on a map connecting the dots to see where you've been? Well, a traverse survey is kind of the professional version of that, but with one huge difference. Every single line, every single angle is measured with incredible precision. So how do surveyors take all those raw numbers from the field and turn them into a perfect, legally binding map? Let's dive in and find out.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the basics, what exactly is traverse surveying? Then we'll get into the real nuts and bolts, latitude and departure. After that, we'll tackle the problem that pops up in every single real-world survey, the closing error. We'll learn how to fix it like a pro, and finally, figure out how to grade our own work. Trust me, if you're prepping for an exam, this is going to cover all the bases.
All right, first things first. Let's get our mission straight. What are we actually talking about when we say traverse survey, and why is it such a cornerstone technique in the surveying world?
At its heart, it's actually pretty simple. A traverse is really just a series of connected lines that create a sort of framework. The survey part is the job of going out there and very, very carefully measuring the length and direction of every single one of those lines.
Okay, now this is a really important point. Not all traverses are the same. A closed traverse is like a round trip. It either starts and ends at the exact same point, making a loop, or it travels between 2 points that we already know the exact coordinates of. Now, the huge benefit here, and this is absolutely key, is that it lets you check your math for errors. An open traverse, on the other hand, starts somewhere known, but it ends, well, somewhere new and unknown. Think about laying out a new road or a pipeline. It's useful for sure, but the big catch is you can't really check or fix your errors, which makes them way less reliable.
So before we can even think about doing any math, the real work happens out in the field. It breaks down into 4 main steps. First, you explore the site. Then you pick out your survey stations and mark them. After that, you start measuring the actual lines connecting them. And finally, you have to record the angles between those lines. It's all about gathering that raw data, the lengths and the directions, because that's the foundation for everything else we're about to do.
All right, we've got our field data. Now we need the right tools to turn those lengths and angles into something we can actually plot on a map. And those essential tools are called latitude and departure.
First up is latitude. Now, this has nothing to do with your position on the globe. In surveying, it's just how far north or south a single survey line travels. Think of it like this. If the sun was directly overhead, what would the shadow of your line look like on a perfect north-south line? If it goes north, we call that a northing, and we make it positive. If it goes south, that's a southing, and it's negative. Simple as that. And departure? Well, you probably guessed it. It's the exact same idea, but for the east-west axis. It just answers the question, how far east or west does this line travel? A line going east gives us a positive easting, and a line going west gives us a negative westing. So together, latitude and departure break down any angled line into its simple up-down and left-right components. Now this slide right here is your absolute best friend for doing the math, so pay close attention. It all comes down to basic trig. The latitude is just the length of a line, L, times the cosine of its bearing angle, and the departure is the length times the sine of that angle. The signs, positive or negative, just depend on which quadrant the line is in. So a line going northeast, that's quadrant 1, so both latitude and departure are positive. A line going southwest, quadrant 3, they're both going to be negative. You have got to get these signs right, or none of your calculations will work.
Okay, you've been super careful in the field, you've crunched all your numbers for latitudes and departures, but when you go to plot it all out, you hit a snag. It's an inevitable problem, really. Your traverse doesn't quite close.
So, you followed your path from point to point, measuring everything perfectly, or so you thought. But that very last point, it doesn't land exactly on your starting point. There's a gap. And that little gap, my friends, is the closing error. It happens on pretty much every real survey because of tiny, unavoidable mistakes in measuring both the angles and the distances. Here's the key idea. In a perfect mathematical world, if you add up all your northings and then subtract all your southings, you should get 0. You should end up exactly where you started on the north-south axis.
Same thing for your eastings and westings. That is the theoretical goal.
But of course, in the real world, when you add up all those latitudes, you're going to have a little number left over. That sum, which we call sigma L, is your total error in the north-south direction. We just call it EL for short.
And it's the exact same story for departure. You add up all the eastings and westings, and whatever is left over, sigma D, that's your total error in the east-west direction, or ED. So how do we figure out the total size of that gap? Well, it's actually pretty cool. Your latitude error, EL, and your departure error, ED, form the two short sides of a little right-angled triangle. And the gap itself? That's just the hypotenuse. So we use the good old Pythagorean theorem to find its length. Easy.
Okay, we found our problem and we've measured it. Now for the satisfying part, the solution. How do we tweak our measurements to get rid of that error and make the whole thing close perfectly on paper?
We've got two main ways to do this, and knowing when to use which one is a classic exam question. So listen up. First, there's Bowditch's rule. You use this when you think your length and angle measurements were about equally good. It spreads the error out based on the length of the lines. The logic is, longer lines probably have more error, so they get a bigger piece of the correction. Then there's the transit rule. You use this when you trust your angle measurements more than your distance measurements, which is pretty common with modern tools. This rule spreads the error out in a different way, based on the latitude and departure values themselves.
Let's see Bowditch's rule in action. To figure out the correction for any single line's latitude, you just take the length of that line, divide it by the total length of the entire traverse, and multiply it by the total latitude error. See? It's just a simple, proportional way to share the blame based on length.
Now, the transit rule formula might look kind of similar, but the thinking behind it is totally different. Here, the correction for a line's latitude is based on how big that line's latitude is compared to the sum of all the latitudes. This means that when you're fixing latitude error, it gives a bigger correction to the lines that run mostly north-south and a smaller one to the lines running east-west. It assumes the error is more in the measuring than the pointing. So, we've corrected the traverse. On paper, it's a perfect, beautiful, closed shape. Great. But we still need a final verdict on our fieldwork. Just how good was our work before we did all these mathematical fixes?
This is where relative precision comes in. You can think of it as the final grade on your survey's report card. It's a really simple but powerful ratio that just compares the size of your error to the total distance you covered. It gives you a real, solid number to judge the quality of your work.
And the formula for it could not be any simpler. You just take the closing error E, that hypotenuse we calculated, and divide it by the total perimeter of the traverse, P. That's it.
The answer is always written as a fraction, with a 1 on top, something like 1 in 5,000. So what does that actually mean? It means for every 5,000 feet, or meters, or whatever unit you're using, that you measured, you are only off by 1 unit. So the bigger the number on the bottom, the better your survey was. 1 in 10,000 is twice as accurate as 1 in 5,000.
And this all leads us to one last, really practical question. You now have all the tools to find your error, fix it, and measure how precise you were. But in the real world, how much error is actually okay? I mean, the accuracy you need for a simple fence line is going to be way different than for a skyscraper or a new tunnel, right? And that's where the math stops and professional standards, job requirements, and good old-fashioned judgment take over.